The organ aging 15 years faster than the rest of you is your thymus. By age 60, it's nearly gone, replaced by fat. And here's what almost no doctor will tell you. This single shrinking gland is the reason your immune system forgets how to fight, why vaccines work weaker as you age, and why a cold at 65 can put you in a hospital bed. Most people believe the immune system weakens slowly and evenly. A little less defense every year, a gentle slope downhill. That's the comfortable story. It's also wrong. Your immune system doesn't fade uniformly. One specific organ collapses decades ahead of everything else, and when it goes, it drags your defenses down with it. That organ sits right behind your breastbone, between your lungs, about the size of a walnut. It's called the thymus. And by the time you're reading this, if you're over 50, yours has likely shrunk to a fraction of what it was. Here's the part that stops people cold. The thymus begins shrinking not at 60, not at 50, but at puberty. Researchers call it thymic involution. From roughly age 13 onward, this gland loses about 3% of its working tissue every single year. By 40, more than half is gone. By 65, it's mostly yellow fat, a process anatomists bluntly named fatty replacement. Now, depending on who you ask, some scientists argue this is a programmed feature of human design, not a flaw. The research is still evolving on this, but the consequence is not in dispute. As your thymus disappears, your body loses its ability to train new immune soldiers. And that changes everything about how you age. The real question isn't whether your thymus shrinks, it's why your body would deliberately shut down its own defense academy, and what that means for every infection, every vaccine, and every cell that turns cancerous after the age of 60. The answer involves something most physicians barely studied in medical school. Let me explain what your thymus actually does, because once you understand it, you'll never think about aging the same way. Picture a military boot camp. Recruits arrive raw, untrained, dangerous if let loose without instruction. They need to learn one critical skill: tell friend from enemy, attack the invader, never attack your own side. That boot camp is your thymus. The recruits are immune cells called T cells. The T literally stands for thymus. Your bone marrow produces these cells constantly, but they arrive useless, blank. They cannot fight anything yet. They travel to the thymus, and inside that walnut-sized gland, they go through the most ruthless training program in your entire body. Roughly 95% of them fail and are destroyed on the spot. Only the 5% that can correctly identify threats and correctly ignore your own tissue graduate into your bloodstream. This is the mechanism nobody explains. The thymus isn't just making immune cells. It's the only place in your body that teaches them not to attack you. When that training fails, you get autoimmune disease. When that training stops entirely, you get something quieter and more dangerous, an army that never gets new soldiers. Here's where your body's timeline gets unsettling. A landmark study from the University of Texas, analyzing thymic tissue across hundreds of donors, found that the rate of T-cell production drops by roughly half every 16 years of adult life. 16 years. Read that number again. By the time you reach 70, your thymus is producing a tiny trickle of new T-cells compared to what you made at 20. So what keeps you alive in the meantime? Your old T-cells, the ones you trained decades ago. Your immune system shifts from a fresh recruit model to a veteran-only model. And veterans, while experienced, have a problem. They're aging too. Think of it this way. When you were young, your body could respond to a brand new threat, a virus it had never seen, by pulling fresh recruits and training them fast. That's why children bounce back from new infections so quickly. But when you're older and a genuinely novel virus appears, your thymus can no longer mass-produce naive T-cells to meet it. You're fighting a new war with an old army. This is exactly why a 2020 analysis of respiratory infections found that people over 65 had dramatically worse outcomes against new pathogens. Not because their immune systems were lazy, but because the factory that builds responses to new threats had largely shut down. Immunologists at Stanford have spent years documenting this collapse in what they call the naive T-cell pool. When you're born, naive T-cells make up the majority of your defense. By 70, in many people, they've dwindled to a fraction. And here's why your flu shot works less well every year. A vaccine is essentially a training drill. It shows your immune system a fake enemy so it can prepare. But a training drill only works if you have fresh recruits to train. When your thymus has gone quiet, The vaccine has fewer naive cells to convert into protectors. This is the documented reason standard dose flu vaccines protect older adults less effectively, and why high-dose formulations were specifically developed for people over 65. Stay with me, because the next part is where this gets disturbing. The shrinking of your thymus doesn't just leave gaps in your defense. It actively changes what your remaining immune cells do, and some of what they start doing turns against you. What happens at the cellular level is far stranger than a simple slowdown. If you've ever wondered why older adults get more cancer, more chronic inflammation, and more strange autoimmune flare-ups all at the same time, this is the connection. And it traces straight back to the thymus. When your thymus stops producing fresh, well-trained T cells, your body doesn't just sit with fewer soldiers, it tries to compensate. The old T cells you already have begin dividing and copying themselves to fill the ranks. Immunologists call these expanded copies clonal populations. Imagine photocopying the same soldier 10,000 times. You get numbers but no new skills. And every photocopy is slightly more worn than the last. This is the second mechanism, and it connects directly to the first. A young immune system has variety, millions of differently trained cells, each able to recognize a different threat. Scientists call this the T-cell repertoire. As your thymus fades and old cells clone themselves to fill the gap, that variety shrinks. Your immune system becomes like a library that stops buying new books and just photocopies the ones it already has. Eventually, you can't find the book you need because it was never written. Now here's the empathy moment. If you've ever caught a virus that knocked you flat for 2 weeks when it barely touched your grandchildren, that's not weakness or bad luck. That's your shrunken repertoire. Your body simply didn't have the right specialized cell on file, and your thymus couldn't train one fast enough. It's not that you're fragile, it's that your training academy closed. And there's something worse hidden inside this process. Some of those old, exhausted T cells stop functioning correctly and begin leaking inflammatory signals into your bloodstream, constantly, quietly, all day long. Researchers named this low-grade chronic inflammation inflammaging, a term coined by Italian immunologist Claudio Franceschi in 2000. It's now considered one of the central drivers of nearly every age-related disease: heart disease, Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes, arthritis. The research is still evolving on exactly how much the thymus contributes, but the link between thymic decline and inflammaging is increasingly hard to ignore. Think about what this means. Your shrinking thymus doesn't just leave you underdefended. It helps light a slow fire of inflammation inside your body that smolders for decades. Fewer defenders against real threats. More friendly fire against your own tissue. Both problems, same root cause. If this is making sense, and you want the part that actually matters, the part about what you can do to slow this down and even partially wake your thymus back up, subscribe now. Because that section is coming in just a few minutes, and there's real science behind it that most people have never heard. Here's another piece almost nobody connects. Cancer. Every single day, your body produces cells with damaged DNA, cells that could become tumors. One of the quiet jobs of your T cells is to patrol for these rogue cells and destroy them before they multiply. This is called immune surveillance. When your thymus stops supplying fresh, sharp T cells, that surveillance weakens. Some researchers believe this is a major reason cancer rates climb so steeply after 60, not just because damage accumulates, but because the cleanup crew has thinned out. A team studying cancer incidence proposed exactly this in research published in the early 2000s. That the exponential rise in cancer with age maps closely onto the exponential decline of thymic function. Some scientists dispute the strength of that link, arguing accumulated mutations matter more. The debate isn't settled. But the timing is striking. As your thymus goes dark, your cancer risk climbs. So now you understand the full picture of the problem. Fewer new soldiers, less variety, chronic inflammation, weakened cancer patrol. All from one organ most people have never heard of. But none of this matters if you don't understand what controls the speed of this collapse. Because it turns out the rate isn't fixed. What governs how fast your thymus fades is the part that changes everything. What almost nobody talks about is this: thymic aging is not purely a clock. It's partly a choice your body makes based on signals you send it every day. For decades, scientists assumed thymic involution was rigidly programmed, an unstoppable countdown set at birth. But newer research complicates that. The speed of your thymus's decline appears to respond to specific biological inputs: chronic stress, certain hormones, nutritional status, and inflammation itself. In other words, the gland that controls your immune aging is being influenced by how you live. Start with stress. Your thymus is exquisitely sensitive to cortisol, the stress hormone. This was discovered almost by accident. Early anatomists noticed that people who died suddenly had large thymuses, while those who died after long illness had tiny, shriveled ones. The reason? Prolonged stress floods the body with cortisol, and cortisol causes the thymus to physically shrink. Scientists call this stress-induced thymic involution. When you live under chronic stress for years, you may be accelerating the death of the very organ that protects you. Read that again. The stress you've carried for decades may have aged your immune system faster than the calendar ever could. Now the hormones. At puberty, the surge of sex hormones, particularly testosterone and estrogen, triggers the first major wave of thymic shrinkage. This is why removing those hormonal signals has a startling effect. In animal studies, and in some human cancer patients given drugs that temporarily block sex hormones, researchers observed something almost no one expected. The thymus partially regrew. It came back. Tissue that everyone assumed was permanently gone began producing T cells again. Immunologist Richard Boyd and colleagues documented thymic regeneration in exactly these conditions, suggesting the gland isn't truly dead. It's dormant. Let that land. The thymus you thought disappeared at 50 may not be gone. It may be sleeping, and under the right signals, at least part of it can wake. This is the hidden truth that reframes everything. We've treated immune aging as a one-way street. The emerging science says it might be, to some degree, reversible, or at least slowable. A 2019 clinical trial led by Dr. Gregory Fahey, called the TRIIM study, tested a combination of growth hormone and two common medications in 9 men aged 51 to 65. The results stunned the field. MRI scans showed actual regeneration of thymic tissue, fat being replaced by functioning gland. And as a side finding, the participants' biological age, measured by an epigenetic clock, appeared to reverse by about 2.5 years. Now, this was a tiny study, 9 people, no control group. Some scientists are deeply skeptical, and they're right to demand larger trials before anyone makes bold claims. Depending on who you ask, this is either a turning point or an interesting fluke. The research is genuinely unsettled. But for the first time, there's hard imaging evidence that a human thymus can be coaxed back to life. Here's what makes this personal. Your thymus responds to inflammation, stress, body composition, and metabolic health, all things connected to how you eat, move, and sleep. The fat that replaces thymic tissue isn't just passive filler. Research suggests excess body fat may actively accelerate thymic decline, because fat tissue produces inflammatory signals and a hormone called leptin that pushes involution forward. This is why obesity is linked to faster immune aging and worse infection outcomes. Your thymus is being smothered from the inside. So the surveillance system, the soldier factory, the inflammation control center, all of it hinges on a gland that responds to your daily life. Which raises the only question that matters now. If your thymus isn't fully dead, and if its decline responds to signals you control, how do you actually protect it, slow its aging, and give it the best chance to keep working? Here's what the science points to. None of this is a miracle cure, and anyone promising to regrow your thymus overnight is lying to you. But each of these steps has a real mechanism behind it, and together they give your immune system its best fighting chance. First, protect your zinc levels. This is the single most thymus-specific nutrient we know of. The thymus depends on zinc to produce thymulin, a hormone essential for training T cells. Without enough zinc, thymulin activity drops and T cell maturation stalls. Research on older adults has repeatedly shown that zinc deficiency is common after 65, and correcting it can measurably improve immune markers. Aim to get zinc through food first. Oysters, beef, pumpkin seeds, and lentils are all dense sources. If you supplement, keep it modest, because too much zinc blocks copper absorption. This is one to discuss with your doctor, not megadose on your own. Second, control your cortisol. Since chronic stress physically shrinks your thymus through cortisol, lowering your baseline stress isn't a luxury, it's immune protection. The most evidence-backed tool is slow breathing. 6 breaths per minute, inhaling for 5 seconds and exhaling for 5, for 10 minutes a day, measurably lowers cortisol and shifts your nervous system out of stress mode. Do it in the morning. Your thymus has been absorbing your stress for years. Give it some relief. Third, keep your body lean, but never starve yourself, because excess fat produces leptin and inflammatory signals that accelerate thymic decline. Maintaining a healthy body composition directly protects this gland. The goal isn't a number on a scale. It's reducing the inflammatory load, smothering your thymus. Walking 30 minutes most days and resistance training twice a week are the most reliable, sustainable tools. And resistance training in particular supports the muscle that keeps your metabolism stable. Fourth, prioritize protein and the building blocks of immune cells. Your T cells are made of protein. After 60, most adults eat far too little. Research on older adults suggests roughly 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight supports immune function and muscle preservation. Spread it across your meals. Fifth, protect your deep sleep. During deep sleep, your body regulates the very hormones and inflammatory signals that govern thymic health. Chronic poor sleep raises cortisol and inflammation, the exact two forces that shrink your thymus. If even one of these was new to you, hit the like button. It's a small thing, but it tells the algorithm to show this to more people over 60 who genuinely need to hear it, and most of them never will otherwise. Dr. Janko Nikolic Jugic at the University of Arizona has spent his career studying exactly this, how to keep the aging immune system functional, and the through line of his work is consistent. The lifestyle factors that lower inflammation are the same ones that protect immune aging. Your thymus, your T cells, your defenses, they respond to how you treat your body. Not perfectly, not magically, but measurably. You now understand something about your own body that the vast majority of people will never learn. That the quiet collapse of one small gland behind your breastbone shapes how you age, and that you have more influence over it than anyone told you. Step back for a moment and look at what your thymus really represents. It's the part of you that taught your body the difference between self and enemy. It worked hardest when you were young, asked for nothing, and then quietly stepped back, handing the job to the veterans it had trained, trusting them to carry on. There's something deeply human in that. We tend to think of aging as things breaking down, but the thymus tells a stranger story, a gland that doesn't fail so much as it retires, on a schedule written into us long before we're born. And yet the newest science whispers that the retirement may not be as final as we thought. That's the part I want you to hold on to. For most of medical history, immune aging was treated as a closed door. Now we're learning it may be a door that's merely heavy, and that the way you live leans against it every single day, either pushing it shut faster or holding it open a little longer. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. What's the one thing in this video you wish someone had told you 10 years ago? I read these, and I genuinely bet most of you have felt your body fighting infections differently as you've aged, but never knew there was a single hidden organ behind it. Here's the truth to carry with you. Your immune system didn't grow weak. It grew quiet, because the one organ that trained it quietly stepped aside. Share this with someone you love who's over 60. They've probably never heard the word thymus in their life, and it's silently shaping their health right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it. What I've been researching for next week ties directly into this, and it's something I've spent months piecing together. Your body never stopped protecting you. It just stopped being trained to.